Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 263, I think. And this is an episode that I've been wanting to do for a while. We're going to talk about collaboration today because mostly because Josh and I kind of work on our own projects and everything. And we cover a lot of comic book content. Most of the stuff we talk about is for comics, and typically in comics, it is a big collaborative industry. I mean, look at the way comics are produced. It's kind of assembly line for the most part. You got your writers, you got your inkers, you got your colorists, your letterers, everyone. And then you've got crazy people like Josh and I who do it all ourselves, and it takes forever. That's why it takes forever for us to put out issues. But the two guests we have on, they're putting stuff out every month, and they're doing some really cool, interesting stuff. So I wanted to get them on. One of the faces we've had on before when we did our horror episode, we had Jason on. We'll get to Jason in a minute. But first of all, let's just talk about anything we have to promote or anything. So like I said, I'm Scott with Circworks Art Labs. You're on my channel, so you probably know, hopefully you know who I am, or maybe you guys found me from a link that either Jason or Aaron sent out. And if you're new to this show, welcome. You can find my stuff at, where is it? Right here at circworks.com. And I've got on there, I've got some digital tools for comic book creators. There's a comic book starter kit that has some free tools and everything that you can get for making comics digitally or print things out. And then I've got other more premium products on there too. I'm also on the YouTube channel. I have a series called Making Comics 101, which is it's basically like a course on how to make comics. It's all for free on YouTube, and it takes you every step of the way from coming up with your idea all the way to the finished product, printing, publishing, and everything in between. So definitely check that out. That's what I got to promote. What about you, Josh? What do you got going on?
Awesome. So I'm like the tiny head up here. I have my graphic novel, Two Stories, which came out in December. It's 120 black and white, hand inked, hand lettered pages memoir about it grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depravity, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. So please pick that up. Pick it up. You can pretty much pick it up at any book retailer online, but I would prefer if you pick it up on Amazon. That helps the ranking. And as you guys know, I think we all know, it's like indies are really hard to get noticed for. And so this is through a small publisher. And yeah, the better it does on Amazon, the better my prospects of people reading it are. So go order this from Amazon if you're into like indie underground memoir. And then joshuakemble.com is also pretty easy to remember for my art and comics and all that fun stuff. Yeah.
All right. And like I said, we have one returning guest. We've got Jason Alexander from Fogbreaker Studio.
Yes.
Hey, Jason, how's it going?
How's it going, y'all?
Love
Fogbreaker Studios, Instagram, mini comic bundles is kind of what we do. That's kind of what we're promoting also. So minicomicbundles.com. You can get it on the Ko-Fi, minicomicbundles.com. 8 pages a month in three stories, 8 pages each. 8 pages, 8 pages, 8 pages. So you get 24 pages a month. So it's like a floppy, but it's 3 stories separated, all printed on newsprint, black and white, limited edition, 250 is all we're printing of each one. So they're super collectible. We got 2 epics, 6-month stories, a couple of 3-month stories, and a bunch of one-shots. So
that's
pretty cool ride. Y'all got to check it out.
Yeah, and I'll once we get through everyone, I've got some of them here with me, and I'll kind of show them up full screen so you guys can see them. Cool. And we've got Aaron Guzman, first time on the show. How's it going, Aaron?
Hey, Aaron.
Well, everything's going very well, thanks.
So you got anything to promote besides comic book bundles? I threw your website up there, and I have a question. I'm wondering how long you had that domain, because I imagine you can't be the only Aaron Guzman out there.
I'm not. In fact, there's an Aaron Guzman that just started following me on Instagram, and it kind of freaked me out. I've had it forever. But no, I'm not promoting anything other than the minicomicbundles.com, actually, right now. Mini Comic Bundles, I should say, at minicomicbundles.com or at the Ko-Fi.com/minicomicbundles. I'm the artist on the series, or the campaign, I should say. And that's the only thing we're promoting tonight. It's mini comic bundles.
Yeah, Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was gonna say that's
Okay.
it. That's we've had
All right.
tunnel vision on the minis for quite a while, so yeah, we're riding them pretty hard.
All right, I'm gonna try to go full screen real quick just so I could show these off.
Awesome.
So they were kind enough to send me, and if you watch, I did some unboxing videos. I think my most recent video, I unboxed the newest one. And I didn't even think about it when you guys, what you just said about it is total. It's like a comic book actually because it's 24 pages total, which is I didn't even think about that. But yeah, so I mean, and I love the packaging. I love the way, and there's some stories that are like one shots, some are continuing stories, and it's just the way it's packaged is really cool. And then I don't even have the whole thing. It comes in another envelope like this, but yeah, and each one kind of shows which comics are in it, and it's just really cool what you're doing. And you're doing this as a monthly subscription, so you can join up, and yeah, really cool stuff. And also, I've been checking out some of Aaron's artwork. You can see it on the cover of these 9-volt anthologies. So I don't, yeah, that's one of the first things. Let me go back to everyone here. So one of the first things I wanted to ask you guys is kind of how did you guys hook up? Was it through like the AAA creators, or how did you guys get together and start working together?
That's where we met. We met on the AAAs, and then we just kind of started talking, in like a private chat because we just kind of vibed off each other. I always dug Aaron's artwork. And so we had kind of batted a couple of ideas back and forth, and then must have been right before September, right in September, Aaron told me about the minis and was like, would you be interested in? I was like, I would love to write some, and then it was kind of a match. Like once I saw like our stuff together, like we just we've been kind of glued together creatively since September. So, it's a lot of learning, but it's been a blast. It puts me so much further ahead in the comics than where I thought I would end up because my artwork is decent, but it's slow, but it still wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be yet. But so now I get to see them completed and it's just refreshing. So, we have a good time.
Yep.
So how did you guys? Well, first of all, Ryan sent me a message saying I have to hold the comics higher. So I guess everyone. So let me see if I can. Can you see these here? So there's one, and then I'll just.
I just think it's so cool that you guys have decided to do mini comics. I mean,
yeah,
Scott and I. Long ago, like before I really knew Scott, like as a person, we were both part of this thing called the Mini Comics Dump Truck back in the day that Kevin started, and then like it was done through Art and Story and BIPT podcast that I did, and it was so cool to like every once in a while, like everybody would wrap up their comics, and you get these really cool like mini comics in the mail, like if you were part of this thing, and there's something just really cool about like, so Scott did mini comics. I did a couple minis for it. And it's like, there's just something cool about the tactile nature of like a mini comic. And this is more for like anybody watching this. Like if you wonder, you're like, I don't know, like, cause I think a lot of people at first value might be like, oh, it's just photocopied, whatever, but there's something so cool about the tactile, like hand put together. It's like the most indie you can get when it comes to comics, but it's just a really cool experience. And like they were saying, it's like limited amounts. So like that's a really cool thing to kind of sign up for and get like a new story every month, but not just a new story, not like a floppy, right? Like an actual mini, which is really cool. And I just think it's cool you guys are doing that. I'm a big fan of like minis and like King Cat and a lot of like the artists that have been doing minis for years. And I think the idea of like a mini subscription thing is just such a cool idea and exciting. And like that in itself should be hopefully appealing to our viewers, because like that's super appealing to me. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and you could tell. I mean, I'm a big fan of mini comics. I'm sure if you did a YouTube search on mini comics, my video will probably be the first or second, or it would definitely be in the top 5 that would come up.
It was one of the first ones I saw for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely, that's definitely one of the ones that I saw. I mean, we picked that up from the. You were speaking about that dump, and
Mini comics dump truck. Yeah.
mini comic dump truck. Yeah, and so basically this started with the AAA Discord. They were doing a mini comic exchange as well, and so
cool.
I was participating in that, and that was the result. It was just this thing. I got this thing about packaging, right? So I'm sitting there
I can tell. I love it.
To figure out how to get my comics to stand out from everybody else's in the Discord, because there were a couple of heavy hitters in there anyway with their mini comics, and so I was like, all right, well, let me do the packaging since I'm sending more than one, and basically by the time I was done with that, Jason and I had already started speaking about another project, a full-size project. And at that point, I realized I don't think I'm going to be able to get these minis done if I have to write them, come up with the story, and draw them. Yeah. And Jason and I were just talking, and he was throwing ideas out there. And I was like, do you want to write these things? I was like, you have all the freedom in the world. You can do whatever you want. They're just really tight, and we'll just pump them out. And the whole thing was about just trying to come up with an idea to basically disrupt the market, I guess. Yeah. It's really what we were trying to do. I come from a corporate background before I was forced into the indie world, right? And so, so basically, a lot of that stuck with me in terms of basically how they operated on a day-to-day basis, how they determined whether to go left or to go right. And so I'm sitting there looking at the comic industry and then what's going on and going, oh my God, what a horrible time to jump into comics. I have to choose a side, first of all, whatever side I choose.
I'm trying to avoid that, choosing the sides.
I was like, oh man, I just left this. I didn't want to go back into it.
Yeah.
Same thing. Right? And basically it was just like, we just started talking and just figured we'd just carve our own little space. Minis and use it as a marketing tool. Make it. It's an investment. It definitely is an investment, not just in time. There's money involved in producing and shipping and stuff. But at the end of the day, just chalk it up to marketing.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's a bunch of stuff you just said that I want to touch on. First of all, you're talking about the shipping and everything and just the design. And I was wondering how much of that design and the size that you're working with came with the fact that you can put it in a regular envelope. And I don't know weight wise if you have to pay a little more for postage or if you can get away with just a regular rubber stamp or
for one bundle. 2 bundles is like 75 cents or something. But yeah, it was just 100%. It was designed with the idea of throwing them in an envelope and getting them out there, and the little plastic that I put in there, it's a little tight to get it out. It's a pain in the butt to get it out of the plastic I put, but that was really just included. Well, 2-part. One, to give it that comic look, but more importantly, to keep it from getting wet in case something happened in the mail. So no matter what happens, maybe the outside envelope, the little artistic envelope gets destroyed, but at least your comics are intact.
I mean, everything, it's very well thought out when I look, with the plastic and everything. And I mean, and like I said, I don't have the paper sleeve here, but there's a paper sleeve. But yeah, I mean, it's just the way it's put together. And I'm a little curious, if you've got the production down to a science as far as, because I mean, there's a lot of folding obviously that goes into it, and I don't know how quickly you're able to get that down, or maybe you have kids that you like, hey, help me out here.
Well, I'm a control freak. That's one thing. So I don't let anybody else fold them because I fold it a very specific way.
Exactly.
There's gluing involved, and after I fold them, sometimes you see you missed a crease or two. You got to unfold it and re-glue it and redo it. So I mean, it's not a science. It really isn't. I don't know how much experience you have with the old-fashioned guillotine cutters, but they're not exact, and so every batch is a little different, and so every.
But that's what gives it the charm,
Every bundle is different, and it's a pain, to be honest.
Well, I can imagine if I was putting this together. So I'm just wondering about you guys. Do you have? I mean, are you out there with the spray mount, spraying that stuff? As far as you said, blue.
No.
No?
regular little stick glue. It's
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah. It's I don't know, elementary school glue or something. My
Yeah.
daughter had a bunch there, and I started using it, and I was like, wow, this stuff actually works.
Yeah, it works. It holds together. I mean, I remember I had at one time I built this box. It was like a big cardboard box, and then I put almost like a webbing in it so I can set stuff in it, and then I can just spray it. That way it won't, so it would just sit on top of this
Oh,
little
smart.
thing.
That's
What's that?
smart. That is so smart, because I always just did a section outside of my apartment in Long Beach, and you would not want to walk over that area.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes that was a long time ago. I don't have that box anymore. So what I do now is I'll take a piece of like a masking tape and I'll loop it around so the sticky side's up and just put it on a long strip of cardboard and just hold it out and spray it and just stick it on it, spray it. But yeah, so there's a lot of ways you can do it. But yeah, it's just really cool to see how you guys do, put this thing together and everything. So
that was my first draw, because the first month was done before I came on, and Aaron sent me a bundle. And I had done mini comics. Like, once I knew I wanted to do comics, that's kind of what we do is, I started printing out my own minis. But then when I saw Aaron's, I'm like, oh, like, these are like comics.
Yeah.
Like, these are like really comics. So I was like, I get to write this for 12 months. Like, that was pretty exciting, because it is a unique product. So it's a fun thing to be a part of, and it's a fun thing to like work with somebody who is on the level professionally. Like, Aaron has an expectation, and it's easy to follow because he holds it for himself, whether anybody's watching or not. So I always know I'm going to get what I'm supposed to get if I give him what I'm supposed to give him. So
that translates to I'm a pain in the ass. That's what that translates.
Hey, no. I was gonna say that later, but I was saving that.
You know what?
I'm okay. I know.
That's great though, because
I'm not much better either. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually kind of like, I think, a quality of most cartoonists. Like, part of why we all get drawn into it, like Scott and I end up doing our own work, and this will be interesting in the collaboration sense, but comic artists tend to be a little bit of control freaks, like we creatively, like and I think that's one of the big appeals of comics, right? Is like, you try to make a movie, right? And you need like a giant room of people, even for like an indie. And you need a cast, and you need like costumes and all of this stuff. Whereas with comics, it's like this one medium where, like, as an artist, you can control so much. And one of the cool things about minis is that too, where it's like all the way down to the production, where, and that's one of the things I love about minis, what you just described, Aaron, where it's like when you get a mini in the mail, it's like if it's saddle stitched, somebody actually stapled it, right? If it's glued, like usually the artist themselves like glued it and assembled it and like did the folds, and like it just makes like it's like a unique art object, I think that's really cool. But I also think that's an interesting thing is like, I don't think it's rare for cartoonists to be a bit controlling creatively. Yeah.
So let's kind of get into that, and because that's something I wanted to talk about as far as collaborations, exactly how you guys work, and Aaron said he's a little bit of a control freak, and is that how do you guys work that out? And a lot of bit of a control freak. I'm right there with you. But, how do you go about this? Let's say, was there any kind of test period? Let's see how this works out, see if we can work together, or, how do you kind of test the waters and all that stuff when you guys first start working together?
We just kind of did it. We just kind of did it. It was funny because as we had started talking, I had come up with the idea for an open challenge where I was just going to do 31 stories in 31 days. I didn't know if I was going to write them all, or I didn't know if I was going to draw them all. And then in the midst of us starting with the minis, Aaron's like, all right, if you writing the stories, I'll draw them. And we did those one a day. And then we started doing the minis, and we've been going with the minis ever since. And, we're still trying to figure out this side of it, as far as like making sure that we're doing what we are supposed to do, making sure that I'm taking the right steps to get the word out. But as far as Aaron and I don't think that all the growth we've had has been while we've been working together.
Nice.
All of it, the ups, the downs, we're both over 40, so I am the way I am, he's the way he is, but the end result is what counts. It's like a sports team, really. It's like if we can win together, we'll figure the rest of it out as we're winning, because it's a lot easier to find common ground if you can laugh versus trying to chew each other's heads off,
Yeah.
Yeah, that part I can attest to. So I mean, that sports comparison is probably the best one there is. The fact that, you get players on the team and then they don't all get along, except when they're on that court or out on that field, and then it's like a symphony, right? And then it's like music, and they're all playing just perfectly, and that's the only way you win. And so, coming with my background, like I said, in corporate America, it's one of those things where I had the opportunity to have a team, to run a creative team for a little while, and that, I think, is probably what I'm surviving off of right now, is what I learned during then. I mean, so I'm able to. I feel like I'm able to work with people and put everything other than the project to the side, and just focus on the objective and what is it going to take for us to meet our objective.
Right.
Yeah.
It's and not that you're pushing the personal stuff to to the back burner or anything, but just making sure that you're both focused on the outcome. And while you're on that journey, you're learning about each other.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. Like, me and Aaron are from two different worlds, so it's like the comics are our common ground, and it gives us a reason to talk, and gives us a reason to get to know each other through the other things. Like, life still happens, but we have an agreement with each other as far as, we have a responsibility to each other for who's doing what with these minis, because one side of it doesn't really exist without the other. So no, if there's something going on and I can't deliver something or he can't deliver something, we feel like we owe each other a reason for that. If he's got work mounting, or I have work mounting separate from the minis, that has to be communicated more than me just saying, nah, not today, Aaron. Nah,
Dude.
I'm not doing anything with the minis. And he's saying, okay, well, I'm 2 weeks behind and staying up late. What are you giving to go along with that? Because the effort from each of us deserves to be matched, whether we know each other like the back of each other's hands or not. So
he heard me. He just see, now I know he heard me because he said that.
I hear everything.
I love that. I think I'm glad, Aaron, you brought up working in corporate America and leading creative teams, because as an art director, it's like one of the things I see that's the most common reason for teams to get in conflict is a lack of communication. And so the fact that you guys are talking about sort of opening lines of communication and especially communicating if there's going to be delays, that's huge. That is so huge. Not just from a client and from a service to a client, right? If you're going to get your, I don't know, let's say it's Netflix glitches out or something and they don't send an email to their customers. That's when you get mad customers, right? Angry customers. And it's the same thing with teammates, where it's if you're generally, if you're running late on a project or something like that, people are pretty forgiving of it. But if you don't communicate it, it's that that can ruin collaborations.
Yeah.
So that's so cool, Aaron, like what you're talking about, kind of applying that knowledge that you kind of picked up, because leading creative teams is a tough business, man, and it takes a while to get the ropes of it. I'm like 6 years in and still figuring it out,
Yeah.
And like
you ever figure out, because you're dealing with people. So
yeah, that's one of the reasons I like it. That's one of the things that keeps me in it. But it's like I do think like that's usually one of the biggest sources of conflict is if there's a lack of communication. Like generally when people open lines of communication, like you have people pretty much getting along and getting work done, yeah, that's cool.
So I have a few questions as far as process wise. I'm going to start with Jason. So Jason, I mean, one of the things that kind of fascinates me, and well, I guess Aaron, I guess you wrote the first bundle, right? Is that
if you call that writing? Yeah.
Okay. Well, for both of you guys, then, I mean, because the one thing that I find kind of fascinating is the challenge of writing, and some of it, like I said, some of them are one shot, some of them do kind of continue, but even the ones that continue, there's some sort of confined story within 6 to 8 pages, and I mean they're good stories, and I'm just how do you work with that challenge of writing? I mean, I guess it's kind of, in some ways it's kind of like comic strips and things like that, where you have to tell a concise story in 4 panels. You got a little more, but then you typically also in some cases continues on. So do you find that challenging, and how do you kind of approach that, and kind of where do your ideas come from, and how many ideas do you have like that you're wanting to get to, and how do you boil that down to those 6 to 8 pages?
They just kind of pop out, and I enjoy the format. I like how quick it is. So honestly, like there was a handful of titles that Aaron had that he had when he was gonna start the bundles.
Mm-hmm.
Hourglass was one of the ones that he had started, that he had mentioned could be a 6-parter. And so I just kind of went with it. I listened to him. We talked about that first bundle, and then a lot of them just kind of happened because you kind of get to be loose. You get to be loose when the stories are so short. So you can literally just think of something and make a short, quick story about it. It's fairly non-committal, but you can tell with the bundles. I kind of got a little liberal with my words. Like once I got the formula down, it's fun. Like it's a fun way to tell stories. So
Yeah.
there's really no magic mystery to it. It's I just pick a title and see what we can come up with. Or one of the stories, Aaron texted me while I was at work and was like, "Hey, I'm really sick of people not putting their shopping carts in the buggy return." I was like, "All right." He said, "You should make a story about it." I was like, "Okay, let's see what we can do." So you'll see that one. That's coming up pretty soon. Yep.
I love that. That's a good thing. That makes me angry just thinking about it. Like I could write 20 pages about that.
Yeah, I don't know, you guys, if you guys have Winco's where you guys are at, but we have this store, a grocery store called Winco, and it's one of those where the prices are cheaper, everything, but you got to bag your own groceries and do all that kind of stuff, and put your carts away. And people are good about it there. I mean, people put their carts in the corral. They don't. They're not a bunch of them just sitting out there. So, yeah, if you want to keep those prices down, I guess you got to play your part.
I was the Bart mulch guy until I wrote this story. Now I find a buggy return. I scared myself.
Because it's just, I mean, to me, even if it's a little, I mean, if they aren't good, if the grocery store, I know we're getting kind of off on a tangent, but it's fun. If the grocery store aren't smart enough or willing to put enough corrals out there, then sometimes I'm like, hey, you got to kind of help me out here.
Right.
But if there's at least a few in every row, or at least one in every row, I'll go to it, because I could. Exercise isn't going to kill me. So, but anyway, so so Aaron, I'm curious, working at such a small format, like what, I mean, obviously these are, pretty detailed. So I assume you would have to work larger, and most comic artists work larger, but I'm just kind of curious about what size do you work at to start off, and then, reduce it for a comic this size.
Oh, actually, I work that size.
Do you really? These are illustrated at
that
this size?
But it's at 600 DPI. So,
okay. So are you working all digital? Because it looks like it's
all digital. What I try to do, so comics, I would not draw traditionally, just simply because it's going to take me too long. Other than what I did with Jason for the Open, I mean, I can draw very loosely with pen and ink on traditional bristle board. But if you're going to pay me to sit there and draw a comic book and I have to draw 20 pages, I'm doing them digitally so that I can copy and paste backgrounds and heads and take advantage of the digital.
Yeah. Well, because it really, it really does. It looks like it's done traditionally, which is, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because, and I'm that's one of the things that I'm trying to figure out, because I've recently started doing more digital, and I'm trying to figure out, whether I'm definitely going to pencil my next book digitally, but I'm wondering if I still want to ink it traditionally, because I've always been of the opinion, I used to be of the opinion that it's faster to ink traditionally, because I see so many people digitally, when they make the stroke and they don't like it and they redo it, where traditionally you put that ink down, it's down. But then when I started inking traditional, when I started inking digitally, I'm like, I think I can do this a lot faster. So my dilemma is, I know I could probably do it faster digitally inking, but I'm afraid that it might not match the rest of the book. so that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out. But I'm definitely going to pencil it digitally for all the reasons you talked about.
I mean, I try to find tools that, brushes, I should say, that mimic or come close to the way of the tools I use. So, I'm very limited in the tools I use. Even traditionally, I'll use a couple of some of these, what are these Tombos.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know what this one's called. It's one that Kim Jong-gi uses all the time.
Oh, wow.
On the wall, and so it's a Japanese, or
is that the brush pen?
Like a Fude pen, or?
Yeah, these are all like really, what is this? I don't know. It's all in Japanese, so I can't tell you.
Yeah, I've got a few of those too, like the zebra pens and everything.
And the regular Pentel brush pen.
That's my favorite right there. That's what I use.
Yeah,
I used to. I like the Kiratakis better though. But
just the price.
But I'm actually faster traditionally, because you have to make a decision, because you can hit the undo button, and that's the one thing that freaked me out. So when I was working with Jason on that Open challenge, that was kind of our feeling out process, right? Yeah. Where he was writing and I was drawing and trying to do it at a daily basis, and we were communicating a lot then. That was all traditionally done. I was doing it in a Bristol board sketchbook, and I was timing myself and giving myself like 2 hours to get that done. And so that basically became training for the minis, so to speak, and trying to get the speed. It all slowed down once I got on the tablet, and I started zooming in at 600 DPI, and now I'm cross-hatching some stories, and I won't cross-hatch if I'm doing it traditionally, because I just need to get it done. And if I can experiment more traditionally, which, even though it takes longer, at the end of the day, I get to experiment, so I stick to the traditional. But the one thing I won't do is I won't use anything. I won't say won't. I try not to use any of the features that I can't replicate in real life, because then, then you're just dependent on your tablet, and you're not going to be able to do it. So I don't use it to the fullest of its abilities, but I will copy and paste the hell out of those comics. And heads, and
no shame in that. There's no shame in that.
Here's a trick. If people don't know this out there, when you draw at 600 DPI and you put in a nice detailed background, I need to zoom in. I can crop in on any other page on any of those windows or doors or cars, and use that same background in different panels, and no one would ever know.
Yeah.
So there is an advantage to it. But the downside is it takes you forever to draw that details panel, right?
Yeah.
I like what you're saying about kind of working with the limitations you'd have traditionally, though, because I do find like a lot of people, when they first go digital, kind of make the mistake of being like, I can use gradients on all of my color, therefore I'm going to use gradients on everything. Like I can use filters, so I'm going to use filters, and I can use any brush, so I'm just going to mix like wet media brushes with dry media brushes and all these different things. And they end up getting this like jumbled kind of crappy digital look. I don't know if it makes sense, but it's like there's a certain look to like digital art that only looks digital. And I think like what you're describing is like, for me, I've found that's like a good window into it, because I do a lot of, I mean, all my comics are traditional, like fully traditional outside of like thumbnails, which I'm switching to digital for. But everything I do for work outside of that is like digital. So it's not like a tough transition.
Right.
But it's like, that's the trick, is like if you're doing a digital painting, kind of figuring out the medium that you're emulating is good, where you're like, I'm going to be using gouache this time. And if I mix with my gouache, I want to mix things that actually mix with gouache in reality, because it's going to look like a better painting. It's a weird thing, but I think that's a really good like window into like working digitally, where it's like, I'm going to ink doing things that I can do inking, but just digitally, and not go that full route. I think that's brilliant. That's really cool.
I actually had to go. I started painting digitally, and then realized I didn't know how to paint, and so I had to buy a set of acrylics.
Yeah.
I started actually painting, so I could go, okay, what does it feel like to paint? Then I fell in love with that, and I didn't want to paint digitally anymore.
I know.
So it's weird, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where if anyone, I mean, I love digital.
Yeah.
You can train yourself at least some part of the way traditionally, it's going to make your digital work that much better.
100%.
Yeah. So just grab a pen, grab a marker, draw on paper. It's going to make your digital that much better. It really is, because you're going to understand the feel. You're going to understand what the stroke should feel like.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain to people, but you do move your hand and your arm differently depending on the tool that you're using. Mm-hmm. So if you're always using a stylus, you try to replicate that with a brush or a pen, you're in for a long night. I mean,
yeah, and look in some of your books, I've noticed like there's some that are just straight black and white line art. Some you've got what looks like, obviously, like you said, it's digital, but some looks like Zipatone, and it does kind of match the way it's done. It matches sort of the way that, I don't know if you can see that, but how you would, lay down actual like traditional like Zipatone and everything. So I mean, it's
some of the later ones I started trying to replicate, because I love, when I draw traditionally, I love using my thumbprints and fingerprints and smudging and love doing that. And so I had to, for I think Paradigm Shift maybe is one of the ones where I started drawing more loosely digitally and trying to replicate that same smudge. Like, so I found a nice brush. There it goes. So I found a brush that in Clip Studio that came close to fingerprints, even though it says it's gouache or something like that. The end result was something that looks close enough to my fingerprint, which I need to actually brush one day. But yeah, so basically, depending on whatever Jason writes, I try to, going back to your process thing. So basically what we do is we text each other all the time. Mm-hmm. And so what we'll do is sometimes I'll text him, like he said, hey, why don't you write a story about this? It's pissing me off. Or he'll do the same thing and come back and say, hey, I have an idea. And then we'll just start going back and forth in terms of, and start developing the story via text. And just like, oh, what if it has this? And what if it takes place in this place? And what if we're in this kind of environment? Then from there, boop, like in 3 days, I'll have a script, And it's not even part of the mini comic bundles. Again, he just throws these things up. And from there, I'll either start thumbnailing them or I'll just file them away and we'll talk about them later and start developing them. But basically everything we do is via text for the most part. And we try to meet every 2 weeks with a Google Meet meeting to go over stuff.
Nice.
And actually talk to each other,
Yeah.
Because, things can get lost with text. Like, it's good for storytelling. It's good. But yeah, it's like when you got two grown-ups that work and they're trying to get work done, but you're trying to get a point across. Like, you gotta be able to follow up with some vocal communication, because
I'm gonna tell them about today, Jason.
Go for it.
Because so when Jason started, you heard how many times he repeated 8 pages, 8 pages, 8 pages.
Yeah.
because I just got on him earlier today because he said somewhere else 6 pages.
It says 6 pages. Yep.
I was like, it's 8 pages. But he literally writes 6-page stories.
Yeah, because some of them actually the story starts on the cover and on the back cover.
That's just it, right?
And then there's a few that that why when I said 6 to 8 pages, because there are a few that it is kind of a just a cover without story. But most of them have stories all the way throughout.
Yeah, they do. Like they're full. Like
Yeah,
I noticed that the other day when I got my cop, like my physical bundles. I'm like, you open these up like it's art from the minute you open the envelope, and it sets a tone, and you just get more and more excited. And it's like it's great for me because I only ever see my stuff written, but now it's like every month, like it's enough gas for me to do more because every month I get to see like, okay, we made a plan, and here it is. Like that's carried out. Now we got to move it, but one part is done.
that's
And
so awesome.
it's always good to see it every single month and physical, not just like in an Instagram post or like scrolling through a page online. Like it's in your hand, and it makes it all worth it. And it's like we want the same thing all the time. We're just learning how to get it together. Like
that is so cool that because I've found that to be a huge thing for like art, especially like those of us who are kind of drawn to like more commercial art, even if it's like commercial art for art's sake, like because most cartoonists aren't doing it for like mass amounts of money. We love this thing, right? But the cool thing about it is like, that moment you see it in print can be like the make or break situation for a cartoonist, because I think if you don't ever kind of have like that printed copy, even if it's a mini, if it's like a poster, if you're doing art for a mug, like whatever it is, when you actually see the physical object, there is that is something that can kind of give you enough juice to keep going. That's really cool. I have a weird question. I don't want to derail, so I'm going to leave this to Scott to guide, but it's a question about, so you guys are in a scenario where you've kind of designed something where you have a little room for play. And I just imagine, like, because of the fact that I'm working on these like long graphic novels where I'm like, for like years, I'm having to draw like the same characters in like similar environments and stuff like that. I do a little bit of stylistic shift, but there's only so much room for that. So it has to be very stylistically consistent, even though I have a couple styles in there. And I was just thinking how cool that would be every 6 pages or 8 pages that you're working on to have like a totally new style you could do, or like a totally new story you can write. Like you could write like a sci-fi one day and then write like a slice of life the next. Like it sounds like a fun, I don't know, like
that's exactly what you get with the bundles. Like that's exactly what you get. You get sports with Paradigm Shift. You got sci-fi with Hourglass. You got this month. You got another like a sci-fi comedy with Paranormal Protocol. But there's also a lot of horror in the mini comic bundle.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of different types of horror in it.
Right.
And that I think that's where we shine. Like I really do think that's where we shine as a team, is like in the darker stories, because those are a blast.
It seems to me that there's kind of a sci-fi horror element that kind of goes throughout, even if it's like a war story, there's a sci-fi or horror element to it, or like, the fishing trip one, same thing, or even, and I haven't quite, like with Paradigm Shift, I don't know if there's quite a sci-fi angle to that, but even with like the wrestling comics. So, I mean, it's kind of, but it seems like it may be going in sort of that direction. So it seems like there's kind of that underlying thing, but it's still good. It's almost like Marvel has found a way to tell all these different, the cinematic universe anyway, has found a way to tell all these different kinds of stories, whether it's a espionage, whether it's, a buddy cop they take all these different genres, but they throw superheroes into them, and now they're kind of doing it with the WandaVision, where they're actually going and kind of diving into like old TV and stuff like that. So it seems like you could just take that horror sci-fi element and tell all kinds of different stories around that even. So
yeah. How do you handle that? Like, how do you guys, because like, I mean, there's definitely parameters, but you also have a lot of freedom, which like when there's, at least for me, like if I have like endless possibilities, it can kind of freeze me up creatively sometimes because there's just too much. How do you guys kind of keep your bearings and sort of like decide on a style to move with, like for you, Aaron, or like decide on the next story that you're going to tell,
As far as the style, it just depends on the story. The one thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to approach, I try not to even read the story up front, to be honest with you. He may send me a story and I'll read it and go, okay, this is cool. But I'm not reading it and trying to visualize it as I'm going through it. I'm just reading it for what it is.
Yeah.
Going, oh, yeah, this sounds interesting. And then I'll come back. I mean, it's the kind of thing where I'm just trying to treat it like a sketch page. I want it to be fresh, and I'm like, all right, what's the story? And I sit there and I start going through it, and this sounds like a panel. I mean, Jason will break down the stories by page, say page 1, 2, 3, in 6 pages, because he writes 6-page stories.
Yeah.
And I take those and I spread them out to the 8 pages. But what I do is I just sit there and I try to approach it as if I was just sketching in a sketchbook, to be honest. I can't have the pressure of, there's already enough pressure in just trying to get the book done.
Yeah.
And knowing that people have subscribed for it, so now I have to do it, and I have to do it. And then there's the whole production part of it that has to take place after I've drawn. So there's still a lot of work even after. So if I start thinking about how am I going to draw this and what style should I use, I'll just want to implode. I mean, to be honest, so I just have to sit down, and first of all, I have to wait to the last minute.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll have everything thumbed out, but I got to wait to the last few days to really get the ink on there, because if not, I'll spend a week on a page.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. I'll come back every day and go, I don't like that panel. Let me tweak it again and again. So I don't give myself enough time to do that. I leave it to the very end. Like now, I'm going to catch up. I'm 2 weeks behind. Am I 2 weeks, or am I 3 weeks behind now? Or am I a full month? I'm not a full month behind yet. We're not as bad as Image yet. So
be the next Walls Cassia Waterworks. Or
no, that's the one thing I can't let happen, because that's the one thing that drives comic customers away. Is that book didn't show up this month? Because it happens to me with TV shows. What? It's not on this week? You lost me. That's it. You had me every week on a schedule. So I'm going to spend the next 2 weeks really just doubling down to catch up, and then take another little break, and then double down again to get ahead, to build that buffer back up. So
that's so smart. I love that idea of kind of like, it's like the deadline itself, and sort of just forces you to get in that zone of like, okay, I'm just committing to this style. Like, this is the style, and we're going forward with this. And then
it's not like I want to do that though. I was trained to do that. I mean,
yeah,
marketing department, and every week there were deadlines. Every single week there was a new deadline. So you never got a chance to rest from the last project. And there's a holiday Monday. Not for you, buddy, because guess what? It's due on Tuesday. So you know, I'm literally trained like that. So Jason, that explains a lot of why I'm like the way I am.
Sure.
I'm used to being constrained in terms of time. I'm used to being constrained in terms of tools. Yeah. I'm just used to constraints and trying to push through it. So
right.
You're generally not the nicest person when you're in that mode.
Yep.
You're just trying to get to your goal, and it's tough. Yeah.
I got you.
I love that.
But I will say, it's the only way stuff gets done. It's the only way stuff gets done. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go, Josh.
I was just gonna say, like, so my dad was like a graphic designer, like really early on, like back in the days of like Paste Up. And I remember above his art table, he had like this clipped out, because back in the day he didn't have internet or anything. It's just something he clipped out of a magazine, but he said it basically said no job isn't Rush. And that's always kind of stuck with me, because it's like the more you do this, the more you realize like you never really have that window perfect scenario where you're going to have like 20 years to work on your Mona Lisa. Like you're going to be, and the weird thing is I've seen like graphic designers, cartoonists, illustrators get crippled by that. Like where it's like, if you don't like sort of have like a deadline for yourself, you can end up, just carving away at something that actually doesn't end up any better. Because what you're describing, Aaron, is totally true, where it's like when you're in house with a team and you're like, there's money on the line and there is no late, like you can't answer with late. So you suddenly find all this capacity to do crazy stuff you never thought you or your team were capable of doing. And at the end of the day, sometimes you end up with better work than if you had like this long, crazy window of time to just kind of noodle stuff, because you just.
I think IOU end up with better work when you're restrained.
Yeah, what you're describing makes sense, because it's like you're forced to just commit and just be like, okay, that first stroke is that first stroke. Let's move forward. Like.
I will say you may not like it, because I know I tend not to like the majority. Basically, anything I like, no one else does.
Yeah.
Anything I don't like, everyone thinks looks good. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it has to do with the amount of time you spend on something.
Yeah.
Jason, I don't know if you run across that. You write a story and
Yes.
you love the story and you pass it around for people to read and no one gets it. And it's no one gets it. You whip something in 20 minutes, everyone's like, this is awesome.
Yep. But yeah, I write a lot of stuff that people just are like, what are you saying? Back to the drawing. Sometimes back to the drawing board. Sometimes like, yeah, you know what? I like it. So it all gets saved somewhere. We are who we are.
Yeah.
So I had a question as far as kind of how, sort of the going into the sort of the, I guess, business model, or just the way you guys are doing things. We talked a little bit about that, but so I'm curious, like. And I mean, it sounds. I mean, you guys. I guess you guys have been doing this for like 3 months or so right now, because we've got 3 out already. So if you were to sign up now, do you start with the new one, or do you start from the beginning?
No. So if you sign up for the subscription now, it starts with whatever month you start, but we give you the first issue free.
Okay.
So number 1 is free, and then you start with whichever one you start, wherever you start. Yeah.
Okay.
You've been doing, yeah.
Because because I was curious if you start, like, if someone starts off like with the first bundle, how you would keep track of all that.
Yeah, I have a spreadsheet with every different column in there, and so yeah, what we do is I decided, since Jason wasn't involved with the first bundle, that became the sampler, so to speak. And so I give that one out. And so whenever someone orders for the first time, you get number 1, no matter what. You get the first one. So if you order the 7th one, you're still going to get the first one if you've never gotten it before, while it's still in stock.
Yeah, because I was thinking, I mean, you're going to have all this content, and I don't know if there's a way for, if somebody wanted to catch up on, say, one of these continuing stories that they missed, or in the future, I don't know. I'm just thinking it may. Once it starts to grow and everything, I mean, you guys could even, like, if you guys started a Patreon or something, and you would maybe get access to all the back issues that you missed, or like digital copies of it or something like that. But because you're producing all this content, and that's the weird thing when you're starting something like this in the beginning, you probably don't have as many subscribers as you will eventually. So there's a lot of those first ones are going to be kind of rare, and they might be in demand. And as it grows, people might want to go back and see what some of these are. So it's kind of interesting, thinking about ways that you can take that content that in the beginning maybe not a lot of people are seeing, and try to figure out a way to monetize that or offer that in some way to maybe entice more people or whatever. But I don't know if you guys have thought about that, what you're going to do with some of the issues that people didn't get, or.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, to be honest. Like the extra 2s and 3s that are floating around out there that break sets. I mean, I was always thinking at the end, we would end up taking, whatever was left over, and at that point sell them as sets. Like just take the last, whatever doesn't, because I'm really trying to limit this to September because I don't know if I want to continue this. It's one of it's that labor intensive.
Yeah.
Where and it's not really profitable. It's not you're going to make money, enough money to live off of. That's why I said again, it's worth it because it's marketing. It's a marketing investment.
Yeah.
To get our name out there, to get our product out there, to try to make enough money to get back. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure what I want to do. What's going to happen with those extra issues? I guess it's going to depend on how many of them are out there.
Sure.
How many of them are voting? I mean, if someone, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know.
I kind of think that to me, the cool thing about something like this subscription and the fact that it's limited and it's like, hey, you might get the first issue when you get in on this, but you're going to start where you start. That's actually more incentive for people to sign up because that's scarcity, and it's like, so if you're part of this thing and it's limited at 250, you want to be in that first group of 250, right? Because like after that, like, sorry, you're out of the club, like at least unless it expands or changes. And I think that in itself can be a drive to like, these are limited art objects, right? With unique stories that are like handcrafted, hand put together.
And we just started shipping to Europe and South America. So some of them are going to get scattered to the four winds, they're going to be gone and they're not going to be accessible. Yeah. And that's pretty exciting. That's like that's Willy Wonka territory, which is pretty cool.
That is so rad. And I think that's good for the business model because it's like it's an exclusive thing. And I think that's really cool for people who can get in on it. It's like there's a difference between the marketing of like a Rolls Royce and a Honda, and it's like that both are similar, but like one is of more value to people, not just because of the quality. Like you're going to get great quality, but also the scarcity, right? Because it's like you just don't have a lot of Rolls Royces like just pumping out all over the place, right? So it's like in a weird way, like by doing these handcrafted like zines, like you're creating this artisanal object that I think the scarcity. I mean, and also the cool thing is you're also creating content and stories, some that'll be longer form. You could collect later, but those minis. It's like that's cool. To me that's cool. That makes me want to join. You
don't have anything that feels like the minis, like, and you don't really get that until you put your hands on them. Yeah. But they're pretty cool. Like, and it's not just because it's like they're not just because they're part of my kid, but they're really, really, really they're nice. I'm very privileged to work on the minis. I'm very privileged to work with Aaron, and I think you can see how much we care about the product when you get your hands on it, because it's of good quality, story wise, production wise, print wise, materials. Everything is, I feel like, is what you would want out of an experience from an indie purchase.
I think the cool part about the books is basically the fact that what you're getting is a peek into our heads, right? We're basically just dumping any ideas that we want to move forward with into this tiny little quick knock it out. Let's see what it looks like. It's almost like a little teaser. We're making teasers of all these IPs, and the majority may never turn out into anything. They may just die within the minis. But kind of one of the things that we're hoping for is, at the end of this run, we want to send out a poll halfway through and stuff, and at the end and get some feedback from people and see if there's something in particular, any storyline, any characters that popped out. Because ultimately, obviously, we want to go and try some crowdfunding and things like that in different areas, and we have some different ideas on what we want to do with that. But we don't know what it's going to be based on, because ultimately, I'm hoping it comes out of the minis.
Right? Yeah,
already established.
It's a good like testing ground.
Yeah. Literally what it is. I just don't want to call it that.
Yeah. Well, so I want to just
so
yeah. And there's usually always a few stories that Aaron and I have a little bit longer of a conversation than the story that we're working on about. You know,
Yeah.
you start to see like this house that we built a story around is in a neighborhood, and here's what else might be going on in that neighborhood, just so to speak. And that's where you say, okay, well, this one might have some legs, and you know, then it goes into, you know, a little separate file in the Dropbox, and we revisit it later. But
I love it.
it's level. There's levels to this, man. Like there really is. There's levels to everything, and you get really tired of finding new levels. But there's always something exciting when you just look up there. You know, it's like just shut up and look. Shut up and
I get
look, and
bored
it's
too
like,
quick.
okay,
I get
but
bored
just
too quick. I'm always looking for another one. Because
that's it.
that's why I
But
love the
yeah,
minis.
there's a payoff to it. It's worth
I
it.
love the fact that we're just changing stories every book. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I was complaining about Hourglass because it was 6 episodes long in these little tiny books, and I'm like, I'm tired of drawing them. And it's like it's only been, you know, I'm only on the 5th, and I'm already tired of drawing them. It's like I just like drawing new stuff all the time.
Yep.
Again, I'm doing like a sketchbook, so it's enjoyable in that regard.
Yeah, that's the format to do it in, though. Yeah, I mean, just yeah, I mean, I just loved everything about it. And for anyone that's curious, so we put up the URL and everything, mini comic bundles plural, but and there's also a link in the description of this video. But yeah, it's like it's the price of a standard comic, $5. You get it sent to your door, or you can pay what, 60 for the whole shebang.
60 for the whole shebang, and you get a copy of year 2019, which is basically a book that I put together based on my 2019 Instagram challenge. You also get access to the Special Perks website, which is still under development because I'm building that too. So that's another thing on my to-do list where we're going to have web comics. We're going to have a couple of web comics, one that's under development now. We're going to have 3 of those, I should say. Jason's going to have some short stories up there for the subscribers as well. And then we're going to have a vlog. It's a sneak peek towards one of the projects that we want to crowdfund in the future, called Open Wounds, which is Jason's baby. That's all going to be part of the perks for people that subscribe by paying $60 up front. The webcomics are going to be scrollable, by the way. So the only webcomics I enjoy doing are the webtoon style, designed for tablets, because the way I'm assuming that most people are looking at everything on their phones now anyway. And so that I actually enjoy webtoon style comics.
That's going to be a pretty fun story too. Like, I'm excited to see what becomes of that one. That's going to be a blast.
And so that's how we're handling the digital part of this, since there's no digital version of the minis, because I want to keep them scarce, and you can't really show them online. People can print them themselves. There's no need to buy them. It's 3.5 by 11 sheet of paper, right? So, one of the things that we're doing is we're going to have a few comics developed, web comics developed, and use those again as marketing, and that's the way I look at web comics anyway, because I have a hard problem trying to figure out a business model where someone would want to subscribe or buy a digital copy of something, because again, you don't own it, and that whole struggle with iTunes.
Other than on it would work on Patreon, I would think, because you're essentially subscribed to a Patreon, and then if you're releasing digital content through Patreon, I think it would work in that way.
I don't have printable comics, so it would be the webtoon style. So I mean, link, and it's hosted somewhere, which means ultimately you can share that link unless you password protect it, and then it starts getting too complicated from there.
But yeah, I mean, it's just honestly, guys, I mean, check it out, because I mean, it's just so cool. And you watch my most recent video where I did an unboxing. I unboxed one of these, and I've done another unboxing on one of my other videos, but you could just see the look on my face, how excited because it's like, I mean, it's not an Apple product, but it's that same feeling. It's an unboxing. It's just the way it's put together and everything. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of love that goes into it, and just
I love you said that.
Yeah,
because that's what I used for Jason. I said Apple. We're trying to be Apple with the mini comic.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's not electronics, but it's art, it's paper, it's ink, but if you're a comic fan, you'd love it. So Also, so there was a question up here that kind of ties into, I think, what we're. All right. So, what inspires you guys to make comics? Any advice and tips for beginners who want to create their own series? So, honestly, and if you've watched any of my content, you'll know my number one bit of advice for beginning artists is pretty much exactly what you guys are doing, and that is start small. I mean, you're starting small, but you're a big thing because you're doing a number of things at once. But just start with a mini comic. I mean, honestly, if you're a beginner, like a little 8-pager like this, that's how you start. And then once you get 1 done, then you get 2 done, then you get 3, instead of trying to tackle a huge, graphic novel or whatever. These guys are doing it right. And like you said, you can experiment with these different ideas. And because you may think you're going to start this giant graphic novel, and halfway through you may be like, I'm not digging this. So, I mean, start small like this, whether it's a 6-pager, 8-pager, or whatever. That's my number one advice that I always give anyone who's starting out.
Yeah, and you get that payoff that Aaron was talking about, where it's like when you see that finished piece, like you get that extra jolt, because it's like you get that finished product in your hand, even if it's a mini comic. It's like there's something about that as an artist, like seeing a finished printed piece of your work. And actually, like, for me, I remember like the first printed comic I made was really what got me hooked on comics. I used to make zines in high school too, and there's something about like when you have like that little, like the actual thing, like whatever way it's produced, something kind of unlocks where you start realizing like that's really kind of what Marvel's doing. That's really kind of what all of these companies are doing. It's just like the cool thing on the level of minis is, instead of like some factory out in the middle of nowhere, people are folding and saddle stitching, and doing guillotine cuts. Like, that's still, a lot of that's still hand done. It's just done in factories, and like at like ridiculously bad pay for the people working there, And the cool thing about minis, like that I think is just so unique, is like you're the factory, you're the artist, you're like, so when you're getting that object in the mail, it's like, it really is like a little art object. And I also agree with Scott, like it's a great starting point too for like cartoonists out there who are like, I don't know, like I've never done a comic. It's like, make a mini, start with a mini. Yeah, that's great advice.
I have no advice for beginners. I'm the worst person to talk to beginners.
I say start. Like, start. Like, if you want to do it, you have to start, and you can't stop, even if it takes you longer than you thought. You can't stop.
That's it.
That's just it.
If you want to make a comic, you have to sit down and draw the comic. Yep. Literally nothing else.
And it's going to take longer than you think.
Yeah.
So set that aside, accept it. Yeah, set it aside and be happy when you finish. You'll be obsessed with finishing one page, but when you get one panel that looks exactly how you want it,
when that happens.
It's always a good thing. So yeah, you just got to start. Start, don't stop.
For me, completion, I get that feeling when I get to put the minis. Where am I here? Every time I finish a mini, I put it inside this little folder. Yeah. That's when I feel that feeling, because it's nothing but pain up until I get up here. And then I'm like, oh. And then I look at it and then I can appreciate it. And I go, oh, that's awesome. And then I get asked to do the next one. And now I'm sitting there and I start the next one. Yep. But it's a cycle. You always end up with that cycle of, oh, this is so much fun. And then you run halfway through it and you're like, man, I'm really tired of this. Oh man, this is so much harder than I thought it was going to be. And then you get to the end, you're like, oh, that wasn't, it just continues to repeat. So that would be my advice to beginners. Just know that it's going to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that you have to push through it no matter what, just to finish it. Doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter, the quality doesn't matter at that point. Finishing is the most important thing.
Yep.
I'll be honest, all those minis that I've done so far, I'm literally pushing out as fast as I can, not thinking about the quality of my art, other than trying to keep the style consistent.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very unhappy with a lot of those books when I look at it from an artistic standpoint. Like, that wasn't what I saw in my head. But I love the product. I love the fact that I went and I put all that out there, and I love the story. But it's never quite what's up in your head anyway.
Yeah, dude, great advice. I want to top it with one really depressing one because this was really inspiring. So this is my favorite piece of advice I've ever heard about comics. My favorite cartoonist, I probably mention him on every single thing I do, but it's like is Chris Ware, and he's like insanely prolific. Whatever you guys think of his style or anything like that, he's like one of the most prolific cartoonists alive. And I remember seeing this lecture where he was speaking to a bunch of people, and he was asked, like, what advice do you give other, like, new cartoonists? And when I heard this, it's like I was literally knee deep in my first, like, serious comic, you know, like I did kid comics and, you know, but it's like my first, like, real crack at doing a comic, and I was kind of hating the process, and I was like, what's wrong with me? So I go to this lecture that Chris Ware is at, and he's like, somebody asked, like, a cartoonist is like, what would you tell a new cartoonist? And he's like, quit. And then, like, everybody's like, what? And he's like, yeah, quit. And he's like, the only reason I'm saying that is, he's like, if you're a cartoonist, you're going to hear that and you're not going to quit. You're going to do it. And then you're going to hate the process while you do it. And yet you're going to, like, love comics, and you're going to do this thing that you love because you hate it. Like you hate the process, but you love the thing. And he's like, so, like, he's basically saying the only reason he was saying quit was, like, the idea that, basically, like, if you truly love comics, like, if you're a cartoonist, you're not going to be able to quit. Like, you have to do comics. It's like this weird thing. So I think I always love that piece of advice too, where it's like, it sounds dark, but it's also true. It's like a lot of us are in comics because we love comics. Like, I don't think anyone's going to basically go through the labor of making these things without, like, having a total love for it. And that's what makes them great. And that's why, like, you know, people should buy, like, these minis too, because, like, it's literally like you're getting this little piece of, like, a labor of love, like this, you know, in the mail, like, every month. That's such a cool deal. I don't know. That's cool. Anyhow. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely gets my stamp of approval. I mean, I thank you guys for sending me these. I mean, I want to see more, so I'm gonna have to sign up myself. So, but yeah, again, if any questions, I mean, if any hesitation, definitely check out my videos where I kind of show some of those off. But not. Frank was asking if Jason quit. No, he got kicked out for a little bit.
So depressing. I'm like, that's not what I meant.
To get my camera on the charger, so I turned the camera off for a second so I could get everything ready.
All right, so I know you guys are on the East Coast, so you're probably getting tired. But is there anything before we wrap up? Anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to mention, or anything like that? That anything about the process of the comics, or anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted people to know about what you guys are doing?
I like to think that we got everything.
Good. That means I'm a good host.
We're grateful we got to come on, but this has been a fun conversation too. Like, because a lot of times we don't stop to think about the collaborative part of it all.
Here's one thing. There is one thing.
What's that?
When you were talking about business models, so people need to understand that we're contractually obligated. Like, there's a letter of agreement detailing what's expected from each of us, because there's money involved, and there's IPs involved. So, you know, that anyone that's going to collaborate, you get involved in a collaboration.
Yeah, take care of yourself.
Very clear.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah, because I mean, you guys it didn't sound like you knew each other before, but even if you do know somebody, like you said, once you bring in the money, and it's not, and some people are kind of iffy, like, oh, I want to do it over a handshake, but, you know, what you think is right, the other person may not, or whatever, or it's simple things. If you just spell it out and just and make it mutually beneficial for, you know, so everyone's happy.
Right.
That's just the way to do it, because everyone's got their own mindset and things that they may not even be thinking about the other that matters to the other person. You know, definitely always have some sort of contract. I mean, it's a good thing you brought that up, Aaron, because I that totally, escaped my mind, but that's like should be like number one. Anyone that's worked with a contract, even if even if you're starting something out, you don't think that if maybe in the beginning there isn't any money changing hands or any money being brought in, there's always the potential of that. And when that happens, and also, you're dealing with IP and stuff like that. Who owns that? What percentage? Who, all that kind of stuff. So definitely, write that stuff out, even if you're good friends and everything, because if you are friends, you don't want to lose a friendship over something like that just because there's a misunderstanding. But if you have it sort of in writing and everyone knows up front, that's that's kind of the way to do it. So yeah, always have a contract. That was great that you brought that up. So
yeah, and don't forget,
it have to be a formal contract. It could just be an email person just outlining what you guys are working on.
Yep.
God forbid you end up in that place.
Yeah, as creatives, I think for some reason we always have this problem, and I think it's because our culture always tries to push that, like, creatives, for some reason there's like this narrative of artists like slaving away, like, just for the passion of it, and like it's so easy for artists, because what we do is kind of fun too. It is a lot of work, but it's fun. There's a tendency for artists to kind of forget they're a business, and I think it's always a good thing to remember what you're doing is business. Like, even if you're doing it like collaboratively, even if it's just like a co-business, it's still a business. And like, if any other business like didn't have contracts, like they would just be like, are you kidding me? Like, that's, like if you were gonna go start a plumbing thing with a friend who's a plumber, right, and you're both gonna like split duties, like doing plumbing, for like, you would definitely want something in writing when there's money changing hands, like no matter how good of friends you are. Like, but for some reason, like as creatives, we always forget that like what we do is not much different in that sense. Like, we're a business. And so it's like, I think that's really, that's excellent advice in any sense. Anytime you're in an art arrangement, have a contract.
Yeah.
I would say also, remember that it's okay to disagree, but you have to be respectful.
Oh yeah.
You have to communicate the right way, because that can change everything. So like all lessons learned and all things that you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, nope, that one was mine. Like, that one was mine. Like, yeah, we disagreed, but that one was mine. And that's fine. Like,
a lot has happened in 4 months, 5 months.
yeah, there's been a lot of growing. And so, no, I've learned a lot about myself. Like, and that's the other thing. It's like, it's not like, oh, this is what I don't like about person A, B, or C. No, it's like, oh, here's some things that I can do different, because if this is what I want to do, I'm always going to be working with somebody else. And the path that's in front of me says there's always going to be other teammates.
Yeah.
So take advantage of your teammates' strengths and appreciate them. Appreciate them more than just being salty sometimes. Because I'm good at it, but you know what I mean? Like, I like to be salty. Like, you like to think you got a way, but you're part of a team for a reason. Like,
business changes everything. Business changes your mindset. Business changes your approach. Once money is involved, there's a deadline. There's customers. Now suddenly it's work.
Yeah,
and when is work ever fun?
We have annual subscribers. Like, we have annual subscribers, so like we have to deliver, and we're not going to deliver our best if we're not enjoying working with each other. So
that's so good you said that too, because like in a collaborative environment with art, and I see this in LA all the time, because it's like, where I art direct, like we've hired people who worked for like, huge animation companies and stuff like that. And the one thing you'll notice in LA is like the previous art director that was in my position before me texted me like 2 days ago to ask about an employee, like who's applying for a gig with them, right? Like, we talk, right? So the point being, if you're a jerk and you're really talented, but you're a pain in the ass to work with, it's going to be hard to get work with teams because teams need people who work with teams, right? And so like that's a good thing too when it comes to business. It's like it's never a bad piece of business to be nice and also respectful, because people like working with people they like working with, you know? Yeah. And like there's nothing better you can have happen in the industry, in any industry, right? Even if it's a one-on-one collaboration, then get the reputation for being fun to work with, right? Because if you're fun to work with, like people are going to forgive a lot more than if you're a pain in the ass to work with.
I don't know anything about that part.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm fun to work with, but it's not a bad thing to kind of get in there, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's just, this is what we want. Like we get a chance to work at what we want to do.
Yeah.
So like, if that's enough, then like, just like,
that's what I'm banking on.
Yeah.
That's what I'm banking on, making on these comics being a success, is the effort we're going to put in, you know, the dedication on the business side.
Yeah.
Not the creative side. The fun side was drawing and writing the comics. As much as I complain about drawing and how painful it is, that's still the fun side. Right? So
they have to go somewhere, or they're not going anywhere.
Right. Or I'm drawing in vain. You know?
Right. No, I get
Being
that.
nice to people and getting on streams and learning how to market yourself. And again, from my past, I come from a background where I produced content for people to sell. Yeah. And so it was my job to study the client that they were presenting to in order to make sure we were giving them the best, you know, putting our best foot forward, so to speak. And so that's what we're trying to do here. We're still trying to figure out our audience, which is surprisingly old. I ran a few Facebook ads for the data more than anything else. I consider those giving out flyers, like going out to the mall and giving out flyers, because they're cheap doing Facebook ads. So we did that a few times, and the data that came back, it turns out that our demographics was pretty much my age group. It's like, what? Which is good. With money. So, you know.
It also frees you up to not feel like you gotta tone a story back that you just want to tell. Because, you know, we can all handle it. So, and like you said, they get paychecks, like they get paychecks every week. So, like that's ideal.
Yeah.
Well, that is in a sense that, like, I mean, at least you know you're not having to kind of market to like all ages or something.
Right.
So that's kind of freeing for like content and being able to draw fun stuff, especially in horror.
Yeah, it's horror especially.
Right. And, you know, being able to talk candidly about a story that might have more mature subject matter, like, because those, you know, those stories have appeal, and you want to talk about them without having to worry about who, you know, our stories aren't for that crowd. You know, they can read them. You know, my kids pick up the minis every once in a while, but there's some that they won't, like some coming out that they probably won't. So
that's cool.
It's fun. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, yeah, I'm digging everything that you guys have put out so far. I'm anxious to see what else you guys got coming down the road. So, unless there's anything else, let's kind of wrap it up.
For sure.
All right. So, let's see. So I guess we'll start with Josh. Josh, what do you got going on?
All right, same thing I always have going on. This crazy graphic novel, 2 stories. So the first book is out. It's available to order. Go to Amazon, pick it up. Hand lettered, hand inked memoir, and so far, like most people who've read it, really dig it. Actually, all people I know who've read it dig it. So check it out and support indie comics. Yeah.
All right. And Jason, what about you?
Breaker Studios, minicomicbundles.com is the primary right now. We're on Bundle 4 is live. Check them out. 8 pages, 3 stories a month, $5 a month, $60 for the whole year, plus you get the web comics, plus you get 2019, plus. You'll love them. All right.
I love it.
All right. Anything you wanted to add to that, Aaron?
No, just everything Jason said times 10. You can find me at aaronguzman.com. I'm also on Instagram as Monkey Wrench, but that's spelled MKYWRENCH. I'm on Twitter as Monkey Wrench Art as well, _art. And I believe, I don't even know if I'm on Facebook. Oh, no, Facebook is minicomicbundles.com. And that's about it. I'm really not doing anything other than slaving away on these mini comics.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me because there's a lot involved in them. So, I mean, you people, if you sign up, you're definitely going to get your money's worth. It's a great deal. So, definitely check out the mini comics bundles. And yeah, as far as me, you can find my stuff at circleworks.com. On my YouTube channel, like I said, I have the Making Comics 101, which is a series teaching you all about how to make comics, everything from coming up with your ideas to the finished product, printing it, everything in between. And I'm also doing the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge right now. I'm in the middle of week 5, I believe.
Nice.
Where I'm working on getting back to my own comic, and it feels good. It's been a while since I've been working on it, so it's great. But if you want to see the whole progress and process of that, tune in for that. And this show that we do here, we do this show. Let me turn this off. We do this show every single week, but it's kind of weird how it works because it bounces back and forth from my channel to Josh's channel. We usually do it on Thursday nights, but sometimes every once in a while we might do it on a different day. And we have a different guest. This week we have 2 guests. It's not often we have 2 guests, but we had a very good reason because we want to talk about collaboration. It's hard to do that with one guest. But typically we've got a different guest every show. So if you want to know when we're going to be on, whose channel we're going to be on, what the guest is, the best way to do that is to join our mailing list. We don't spam you or anything like that. We usually just about 30 minutes before we go live, we send out an email, and you can find the link to where to sign up for that mailing list in the description of this video, along with a direct link to where you can find the mini comics bundles. So honestly, check them out. Just go to the website and see. It's very well designed website and everything. You get a good look at what you're going to get and everything. And it gets my recommendation because this stuff is just great. It's just fun to unbox them and just see what you're getting from month to month. So thanks again for you guys for sending those out. Thanks for being on the show. And we will see everyone next week.
All right.
And also thanks to everyone in the chat. Were you going to add something, Jason?
No, I was saying thank you for having us on.
Yeah. Thank you guys, and thanks to everyone in the chat. We'll see you guys next week. That is all.